Hi, this is Clara from NYC This month, I wanted to come and reflect with you about the topic of appreciation and celebration through the lens of needs, through the lens of nonviolent communication. In other words, an exploration of our relationship to our needs when they're met, to our feelings when they're. Let's look at two aspects of that. So I said celebration and appreciation. So there's an aspect of connecting to met needs that in some way happens more internally. And that's our ability to notice when things work, so to speak. It's interesting to notice that our nervous system is typically more attuned or ready to respond when something unpleasant is happening in our body. Sometimes this is called the negativity bias. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for paying close attention to when our needs are not met, because that might sometimes, and maybe it is more in a distant past, sometimes that might be a life or death situation. So addressing unmet needs and recognizing them and can take us towards action in an efficient and effective manner. So there's certainly reason for that. And so unpleasant emotions and unmet needs generally have the effect of sharpening our focus of attention, make us very focused and able to address the situation at hand. And it's, in a way, it's almost like they create a sort of tunnel vision. And sometimes you may have had the experience of not being able to think about anything else than what is kind of not working and catching your attention. Pleasant emotions, on the other hand, might not always show up that loud. And I mean, sometimes they may, right? Something happens that brings us a sudden joy or a satisfaction and excitement, and we may notice that more readily, but generally they're not as loud as the negative one. Most often, I think we don't necessarily need a conscious practice of noticing unpleasant sensations or emotions. They may be very, very present and easy to detect. With pleasant emotions, especially those of contentment and calm and serenity and peace, they are not necessarily as vivid all the time in our awareness. And so for those, we may need some conscious practice of noticing and recognizing. Pleasant emotions have an expansiveness to them. Research shows how the experience of pleasant emotions widens our span of attention, allows us to integrate new learning, allows us to assimilate and digest really our experience, enables us to strengthen social bonds, and ultimately to reduce our stress and so on. If we add a bit from the lens of NVC, being aware of pleasant emotions also allows us to go and connect to our needs, to our met needs in this case. And even slowing down for a moment and naming what needs are being met in a certain moment is almost like it creates a path to recognizing the quality of our experience, which is something that matters to us, of which we are reminded now through a pleasant experience in the body. So you can even try right now for a moment with me to bring to mind a recent moment where you experienced a pleasant emotion, a pleasant feeling, and ask yourself what was happening in that moment, maybe bringing it back to memory. How would you call this feeling that you experienced? And what need or needs were met for you in that moment? I recalled, for example, a moment yesterday when I was listening actually to a lecture on a topic I was very fascinated about. And I was finding the speaker very engaging, and there was in my body a sense of thrill and excitement and vitality, aliveness. And that showed up in my body as really this kind of opening of the heart, alertness. And if I go back to that and ask myself what need was met in that moment, I think there was inspiration, vitality, clarity, engagement, and also maybe some sense of shared reality. I was finding a lot of connection with what I was hearing. So I can breathe and slow down with those qualities, and remembering that inspiration is important to me, clarity, engagement, those are qualities that matter. And that's the blueprint of how I feel when those qualities are present in my experience. And so I hope you can maybe even pause the video for a moment and you can write that down and take a note. What was happening? How was the experience in your body? What needs were met for you? And this can be an interesting pause in your day that you can have on a daily basis, or maybe at least on a weekly basis. I think you can find your routine for that. And so that's one aspect. Second aspect is more relational. So how do we communicate with each other when we want to express appreciation or gratitude for something that someone has done that brought us some form of pleasant emotion, okay? So in our language, often that may come in the form of praise. So, which in some ways is like a positive judgment. You did such a good job. You're such a great friend. Oh God, you were amazing. And you can, that was great. You can fill the blanks and even maybe recall some instances when you were on the receiving end of a compliment, a positive judgment. You look great. So there's usually less of a challenge with positive judgment than with criticism or blame. You may recall a previous video that I shared last month about unpacking moralistic judgments. And certainly there's a challenge with those because they tend to create disconnection. Praise or compliments at most of the times can feel good, but in some ways they don't reveal a lot. If you pause and reflect on that, whenever I am expressing praise, that doesn't tell the person what am I really talking about? What did they do that contributed to me? Why it contributed to me? What needs were met? And how my life was made more wonderful by what the person did. And so in some ways, praise could leave me a little disoriented or maybe unsure as to, so what have I done? And also, why is the person expressing that? And sometimes I may also feel almost leaning into trying to deflect that because it's hard for me to relate to that expression. Another interesting exploration is to pause to ask ourselves, so what's our intention when we want to express a praise or a compliment? What need are we trying to meet? Is it a need for celebration and appreciation, or is sometimes maybe a need for harmony or connection or being accepted or being sometimes even getting to some result, maybe getting to a certain outcome, like the person behaving in that particular way again. Some of my participants in the class were saying how sometimes praise creates a sort of power differential, right? If I'm giving praise, I'm kind of almost in a position where I'm in a way evaluating you, and so that also might not always feel connecting, right? So when we talk about appreciation in NVC, the intention of that is purely to celebrate and to let someone know how they made our life better and how some actions they did contributed to me. And so if we want to unpack also in this case and expand our experience of an expression, not just experience, but expression of appreciation, we can include with some more details what is in particular that the person did that worked for us. How did we feel when that happened? And why that was important to us, what needs were met for us in that moment. And then we can choose to try to weave those elements. So what was happening, how I felt, what need was met. We can weave that together in an expression of appreciation to the people who contributed to us. So if, for example, another moment, a moment where I experienced something that brought me happiness. I know I woke up this morning to a brief video message from my partner that was sharing some of his evening last night where we were not together, and in a way greeting me into the day. And I know that in that moment I felt very warm and calm, and maybe also a sense of reassurance and comfort, and really a sense of closeness and connection, and so a lot of met needs, right? There's a sense of care and partnership, and so those I can be present first of all to that and connect to that experience, and then if I wanted to thank my partner or express an appreciation, rather than simply saying, oh my God, you're so amazing, or I love you, which I imagine they would not be that unpleasant to hear. I could say something as, when I woke up and found that message from you, that immediately brought some sense of relaxation and warmth in me, and it just really means so much to me to receive that, and somehow it gives me connection and gives me a sense of care, and really helps me to start my day with a brighter mood and more centeredness and groundedness. So thank you. Can you sense the different, maybe richness in some way between these expressions? And my appreciation doesn't say anything about what the person is or isn't. My appreciation is centered on my experience, and I want to share with the other person to let them know you did something that made my life more wonderful, and I want to celebrate that with you. To me, there's such a beautiful experience of interdependence in an expression of appreciation. The sense of we're in this together, it adds a new flavor for me to the experience. So try it out. Try out also this one. Maybe think about a person in your life and something they do for you that brings you joy or any other sort of pleasant emotion. Remember an instance of that and ask yourself, what happened? What did I feel in my body? And what needs were met? And then stay with that for a bit and try to weave those elements in an expression of gratitude to the person who contributed to you. I find that this is such an amazing and sometimes underrated fuel and nourishment for our day-to-day. And I hope you can try it out. You can let me know some examples in the comments if you like. And thanks for spending this time with me. Till next time.